Now, in this second video, what I'm going to show you is how to configure the computer to connect to the AlbaCombi and go through all the web server and being able to go through all the calibration and monitoring options that the AlbaCombi has. Now, what I have connected in this computer right now is the AlbaCombi just connected with an Ethernet cable to this Ethernet input, nothing special, and a power supply, 12-volt power supply connected to the supply, nothing else, just the AlbaCombi supply with 12 volts and the Ethernet connection connected to the computer, nothing else. That thing alone will allow me to go through all the options of the AlbaCombi without having anything else connected. In that sense, you can on your workshop configure the unit feeding voltage or resistance through any input. So you can play a little bit in the unit with before going to the board, just to check that you know exactly what the unit is doing and how to calibrate it, etc. Now, the first thing that you have to do, the AlbaCombi as it comes from the factory, it's on a fixed IP, which is 192.168.0.50. So the first thing that you have to do is be sure that you can connect to that computer. Now, normally the computers are set up in DHCP mode, which means that the Ethernet something in the network, either the 3G router or the ADSL router or wherever, will supply an IP to the computer. Actually, the AlbaCombi has got a DHCP server, but in default mode is disabled to avoid any conflict with any other DHCP server in the network. Now, so in that sense, the first thing that you have to do is, this is Windows 7 by the way, so if you happen to have XP or Windows 8 or Vista or something, or a Mac, it may be a little bit different, but it's basically the same thing. Now, I'll go to network, I open the network connections, I open the adapter settings, I go to the particular adapter connection and I right click properties, and the first thing that I have to go is go to the TCP/IP v4 and then go to properties, and you see that, well, it's in Spanish, but in English it's obtain IP automatically, which means that it waits. This is the standard way that computers are set up. So it waits for an IP coming from a DHCP server from the network. In this case, because I'm connected just to the AlbaCombi, there is no DHCP server, so I have to supply a fixed IP to this computer. Say this computer, it has to be on the same network as the AlbaCombi, so I can set up any address of that network except the one that the AlbaCombi is using, which is the 50. So I set up this computer as 192.168.0 and say 10, and I click on the subnet mask. This is okay, no need to set up a gateway or anything. Okay, I press accept and close. I close this. If I want to do a further test, I can open my standard command, and the standard command will open, and if I want to check whether the AlbaCombi is present, I just ping to it, and that response that you see there means that the AlbaCombi is alive and answering. If I'm just going to unplug the AlbaCombi, if I just unplugged the AlbaCombi and I just repeat that ping, you see that there is no response. Now, there is another thing that you can check. I'm just going to connect it now, and if you see that the last one, the last ping is answered, it means that at the moment I have connected the AlbaCombi, the ping has returned. So it means that with this you can check that actually the AlbaCombi is connected. There is another thing that you can do which tells you whether the AlbaCombi is physically connected or not. You can go to the same, we close this, we can go to the same page that we have gone before, and I go to change adapter settings, and if I unplugged the AlbaCombi connection, you see that in here the connection in which the AlbaCombi is connected is marked as disconnected. If I reconnect it again, it will be shown as connected. So this one, the fact of this is connected means that we have got physical connection. The fact is that the command what I've done before is answering to the pings, it means that there is a logical connection. So once, I mean, you can skip those tests. This is, I'm showing you this just for you to have a couple of tests on whether the AlbaCombi is connected or not. Actually, this applies to any Ethernet device connected to your Ethernet connections. If we close this and we just open the Chrome, by the way, the AlbaCombi is fully compatible with Chrome. It is somewhat compatible with other browsers, but it is specifically adjusted and improved and tailored to be used with Chrome. Anyway, so I just put 192.168.0.50. This is the address of the AlbaCombi. I just press enter, and then fairly quickly you see that I've got the AlbaCombi webpage. You see that I've got the screen, which engine temperature, RPM, and then on top of it I've got general, channels, outputs, NK2, N2K, displays, full view, and then lock and unlock Klog. Now, forget about this. The first thing that I have to go is to general. Now, in general, I've got a few things. First is this is coming from the AlbaCombi, right? All this information. Now, a little bit of explanation. Our website in which you can download the latest firmware and technical information. Firmware version, this is the first firmware that we have, which is basically 1.0. Serial number of the unit. If you talk with support with that serial number, they will know exactly the hardware that you have. DHCP server. I mean, normally this is disabled, but if you happen to if you want the unit to give you an IP, you can activate this. Normally this will be deactivated. IP, subnet, mask, and gateway. Normally, if you just use AlbaCombi, the Ethernet connection to calibrate it or to monitor, you can leave this as it is. If you want to integrate the AlbaCombi on another IP network, you can change this so that it will match the settings of your network. MAC address, nothing else, and NIMIA 2000 address. This unit comes with a fixed NIMIA 2000 address of 9, but if it happens to find another NIMIA 2000 the same NIMIA 2000 address on the network, they will talk together and they will change addresses accordingly. Now, if you change anything on this page, you just give or press save, and that's it. Okay, the second thing that you've got is channels. In channels, you've got all your channels. See that on the channel definitions, you've got the pin, connection pin, and GND. And again, this correlates to the physical input on the AlbaCombi. So in that sense, you know exactly where the input is connected and you can check it out. So I'm going to the first input, which is volt ohms number 1, and I click in there, and basically the AlbaCombi is pre-configured to a certain calibration parameters, but you can change it to mimic anything. Say that this unit is pre-configured as engine temperature number 1. It says that the signal is coming from an engine. It's measuring temperature in degrees centigrade. It is 120 ohms high alarm, 120 degrees high alarm, 40 degrees low alarm, filter level, which is the smoothing of your input, and you can select a type of sensor coming from it. So we can select a video 40 to 120 centigrade sensor, or 50 to 150 of area, or we can define our own sensor. Now, when we have when we select a sensor, this calibration table in here gets populated. Now, if we happen to have a particular sensor that we know the calibration table or the calibration data, we can fill up this table manually. Or if we happen to if you want to change the parameters of that particular sensor, we can go to this calibration table and change the parameter. Now, I can do the same thing for all the channels. Okay. Now, if I change anything, of course I save it. If I go to outputs, it means I've got in here the two outputs, output relay number 1, and I can use that output and then decide whether this output is coming from an alarm signal from any of the channels, an NIMIA 2000 signal, or manually I activate or deactivate those outputs. Normally you will left this into alarm mode, and then you will select in here which of the channels is going to drive this alarm, and then the limits are preset on that channel, and then you select in here whether the alarm will be triggered if the input is higher, lower than the limits, or is between the limits, etc. So you save it and you set it up, and you can do this thing for those two relays, those two alarm outputs. Now, once you have configured your channels and your outputs, if you want to configure, you can do two things with those inputs. Say you want to drive NIMIA 2000. So when you go to NIMIA 2000, you can have up to 15 PGNs to fill up. So say that you want to generate when we saw before on channel number 1, where we were, that is okay, channel number 1, we have engine temperature, and that's volt ohms number 1. So if I go to outputs, I said okay, I want to N2K, I said I want to generate engine parameters dynamic. Now, engine parameters dynamic, the first thing that I have to select is first, is this the starboard port or primary engine or what? So define the instance, and then in the temperature, or in this case the engine temperature, I can select any of the inputs which is configured for temperature. I can select any of the two. So in this case I select input 1 volt ohms, which has the calibration that I've done before, and I save it. And then if this is active, then the this PGN will be filled or will be sent to the NEMEA 2000 network. Now, the channels that are empty are filled up with not valid data, and the fields which are populated with a channel will be populated with valid data coming from that analog channel. So now if I press save, I will be start sending NEMEA 2000 information. In this case, I will be sending data for oil pressure and engine temperature, which is two resistive sensors coming from the engine. Now, if I go to PGN number 1, engine rapid update, you have to understand a little bit about PGNs, because in this case, engine dynamic, it is talking about temperatures, pressure, a little bit slow update data. And if you go to rapid update, this is fairly quickly information. So I've got engine speed, which is coming from channel number 1. And what do I have in channel number 1, RPM number 1? So I have RPM. So basically, in this case, I have active PGN number 1, which will give me through NEMEA 2000 RPM, and I have PGN number 1, dynamic number 1, which will fill up from the same engine, which is instance 1, will give oil pressure and engine temperature. So I will have from engine number 1, RPM, pressure and temperature coming from resistive centers. Now, all this information will be fed to NEMEA 2000. So, and obviously you will need a NEMEA 2000 display. Now, and just for your information, you've got all those PGNs that you can generate. You can generate up to 2 engines, 3 batteries, 4 fluid levels, 3 generic temperatures, and 1 pressure. This is all the information that you can generate from the AlbaCombi. Now, the NEMEA 2000 is one thing, but the other thing, what if you don't need to, or you don't want to use NEMEA 2000? Now, we've got another thing which we call displays, which is a unique feature of the AlbaCombi, which is, say that you've got up to 19 displays. Those displays can come from the analog inputs of the AlbaCombi. Say display number 1, you say, okay, I want to have display number 1 for the RPM. What is the title? What is the label? What display tape gauge? What's the size? Do I want to see this in full view? And the limits, green, yellow and red zone. You just save it. You go to display number 2, and the same thing applies, but this time I've got engine temperature coming from volt ohms input number 1. Now, again I said which size. Before it was on display number 1 it was 3 times 3, and in display number 2 is temperature is times 2, and with the green and in this case there is no yellow zone and red zone, so and it's active. You can configure up to 19 displays, so from number 3 to number 19 they're empty, so it's just 1 and 2 is to show. Now if this is to define displays, to define the displays. If I just go to full view and it just shows those two gauges. Now interestingly enough, this is a monitoring page, so I will be monitoring anything which I am getting from the analog inputs. So in this sense, you don't need an EMEA 2000 display, you just need a computer or iPad or laptop or something to show. As long as you are connected through Ethernet, you can see any of the displays that you have configured. Now if say that you see that before I define the RPM as times 3 and the engine temperature was defined as times 2. Now this is why the size of those two gauges are different. Now another thing is where to fit those displays. If you see this small padlock is closed, and if I try to move this, is closed. If I just click on it, the padlock is unclosed, and now I can move around those two gauges, and if I reclose them again, I have defined those two gauges in the place that I want. Okay, I'm going to, you see, just to show you that, because every now and then the information is being gathered from the Alba engine, so you see this loading. It's very quickly. Now I will unlock the padlock, I will put the RPM here and the engine temperature in here. So imagine, and I will close this again. Imagine that you have got your Alba engine pre-configured, all your displays done, etc., etc., and you want to use this computer as a monitoring system. It's not very cool or wise to have your or your Windows or Mac or whatever interface around. So what can you do? Now, one of the reasons why I use Chrome is because it has a nice feature, which is the kiosk mode. If I close this, if you go to the, and you go to Chrome, you copy, so you go to Chrome, you copy it, you copy the icon and you paste in the desktop, and you go to properties. You can configure Chrome in a special way. Say that this is the Chrome application, okay, this is standard, but then you just put -- kiosk mode and then HTTP, sorry, okay, so what I've just have done is I have set Chrome to open in kiosk mode, which is a full view, full screen mode, and go directly to the AlbaCombi address. I press apply, accept, and I double click on Chrome. What it does is open in what we call the AlbaCombi, whenever you start the AlbaCombi, it always starts in full view. So as you see, the AlbaCombi has just started full view, no interface, and just the information that I've got. So we set the AlbaCombi so that whenever you open the browser in the AlbaCombi, it always will go straight to the monitoring page. From there, you can go to channels or outputs or whatever. But if you just want to use the AlbaCombi as a monitoring system, it will go straight to this page. Now, in this kiosk mode, you can exit with Alt 4 and it will go out. So, for instance, in Windows 7, if you wanted this screen to appear whenever the computer boots, the only thing that you have to go is copy, open your startup so the only thing that you've got, every computer is a little bit different, but you always got your startup, so to speak, the startup folder, and you can put in there the Chrome icon, so that the system starts by itself. But at the end of the day, or you can put the Chrome with this direct access address that we have spoken before, and whenever you double click on it, you access the full view system, which is monitoring the full system. And again, closing it with Alt F4.